The bus screeched to a halt, flinging its passengers forward as it came to an abrupt stop. Inside the crowded vehicle, a mixture of tension and urgency filled the air. Emma Walker tightened her grip on the handlebar, her heartbeat racing as she glanced at her wristwatch. The interview was scheduled for 9 a.m., and it was already 8:40. She was still 3 blocks away. "I can't miss this opportunity," she murmured under her breath, willing the bus to move faster. The chance to work with Helping Hands NGO, a renowned NGO that transformed lives, was a dream she had nurtured for years. As the bus resumed its journey, Emma's mind wandered to the fierce competition awaiting her. She had seen the announcement, "Only one candidate will be selected." The thought intensified her resolve. She had prepared extensively, practicing potential questions, researching the organization's values, and even rehearsing her posture. The bus halted again, this time at her stop. Emma jumped out, clutching her file tightly. She wasn't alone. Several other candidates emerged, all rushing toward the same destination. The race was on, but just as Emma joined the hurried crowd, a faint cry broke through the bustling street noise. "Help me, please." Emma froze, scanning the area. By the roadside, a frail, elderly man lay sprawled on the pavement. His clothes were tattered, and his face was contorted in pain. He clutched his chest, his voice barely audible. The cry for help seemed to echo louder in Emma's mind as she stood frozen on the pavement, torn between 2 equally pressing desires. Ahead of her, the crowd of candidates moved with singular purpose, rushing toward the tall glass building where the interview was set to take place. She felt like a lone pebble in a rushing stream, uncertain whether to follow the current or resist it. The old man's voice quivered again, breaking through Emma's hesitation. "Please, someone, help me." Around Emma, several candidates slowed their steps, glancing toward the man before quickly resuming their hurried pace. Some looked uncomfortable, while others muttered dismissive comments. "Who has time for this now?" One young man in a sharp black suit whispered to the woman beside him. "We'll all be late." "I know," the woman replied, shaking her head. "Poor thing. But what can we do? We can't risk losing this opportunity." Emma bit her lip, her heart pounding as the internal conflict raged. Should she help and risk losing her chance at the interview, or should she keep walking like everyone else? Suddenly, a tall man in a navy blue tie stopped beside her. He looked at the fallen man with a mixture of pity and irritation. "Sir, maybe you should call for someone instead of lying here." "We're all in a rush," he said brusquely before walking away. Emma's hands clenched around her file. She hated this feeling, the gnawing guilt of walking away, coupled with the fear of jeopardizing her future. "It's not my fault," she told herself. "I didn't make him fall. I have every right to prioritize myself." But as she turned to follow the others, her steps faltered. Something about the old man's tear-streaked face tugged at her, a reminder of her late grandfather, who had once slipped on a bathroom after taking his bath and waited for what felt like an eternity before someone came to help. "Please." The man whimpered again, his voice weaker now. Emma exhaled sharply, throwing one last glance at the candidates disappearing into the distance. She made her decision. Emma rushed to the man's side, kneeling down beside him. "Sir, I'm here," she said softly. "Let me help you." The man's eyes widened with relief, and he grasped Emma's arm. "Oh, thank you, dear. I thought no one would stop." Emma quickly assessed the situation. The man's ankle was visibly swollen, and his breathing was uneven. Emma pushed aside her fear of being late and focused on the immediate need. After all, that was also part of her work. "Can you move your foot at all?" Emma asked, her voice calm despite her racing heart. The man winced and shook his head. "No, it hurts too much. I think I twisted it." Emma looked around for help, but the street seemed suddenly empty of good Samaritans. Those who had been walking nearby had long since disappeared into the distance, their priorities lying elsewhere. "Okay," Emma said, trying to sound reassuring. "Let's get you to a safe spot." As she struggled to lift the man to his feet, a group of latecomers to the interview passed by. One of them, a young woman in a gray blazer, paused briefly. "Do you need help?" Emma's eyes lit up. Yes, please. If you could just… Oh, sorry. I meant the old man. The woman interrupted, waving dismissively. But I really can't stay. Good luck. She hurried off, leaving Emma dumbfounded. More people passed by, each offering fleeting glances and excuses. A man shrugged and said, I'd help, but I'm already late. Another added, he will be fine. Someone else will stop. Emma's frustration mounted. Was everyone so consumed by their own goals that they couldn't spare a moment for basic decency? Finally, she spotted a small restaurant nearby. She turned to the man. Sir, I'm going to help you get there. It's not far. Can you stand if I support you? The man nodded hesitantly. I'll try. With great effort, Emma helped the man to his feet. The older man leaned heavily on her, each step slow and labored. Beads of sweat formed on Emma's forehead as she supported the man's weight, her mind racing with thoughts of the ticking clock. I'm so sorry, the man said, his voice trembling. You must have somewhere important to be. Emma forced a smile. Don't worry about it. Right now, I just want to make sure you're okay. The walk to the restaurant felt endless. Every step was a test of Emma's resolve as she balanced her concern for the man with her rising anxiety about the interview. Finally, they reached the entrance. Emma guided the man inside and flagged down a waiter. He is hurt, Emma explained hurriedly. Can you bring some ice blocks for his ankle? The waiter nodded and quickly returned with an ice block and a glass of water. Emma helped the man into a chair and adjusted the ice block around his swollen ankle. Thank you, dear, the man said, tears glistening in his eyes. I don't know what I would have done without you. You saved my life today. Emma smiled, though her chest felt tight with worry. She glanced at her watch. It was already past the time she should have arrived. I have to go now, she said gently. But you'll be okay here, right? The staff will take good care of you. The man grasped Emma's hand. You're a kind soul, he said. God bless you, my child. Emma squeezed her hand, then turned and sprinted toward the interview venue, her heart pounding with both exertion and dread. As she ran, a part of her wondered if she had made the right choice. The other part whispered that sometimes doing the right thing wasn't about convenience, it was about courage. Emma's breath came in short bursts as she sprinted toward the interview venue. The rhythmic pounding of her footsteps on the pavement matched the chaotic beat of her heart. Each step felt like a weight, as though she were carrying the weight of her decisions, her dreams, and now, the old man she had just left behind. What if I've made a mistake? She thought. What if I'm late, and I lose this opportunity? What if I'm never given another chance like this? The faces of the other candidates flashed through her mind, their cold indifference to the man's plight like a slap in her face. They'd seen someone in need, and they'd turned away, each too consumed with their own futures to care about someone else's. Yet, Emma had stopped. She had chosen to sacrifice her own ambition, however fleeting, to help someone who had no one else. Was that the right choice? But then she thought about the man's tear-filled eyes, the quiet pain in his voice. How could she just walk away? The thought of abandoning him to the cruelty of an indifferent world felt unbearable. No, she hadn't made a mistake. She couldn't live with herself if she had chosen anything else. Emma's legs burned as she neared the tall building, its glass windows reflecting the early morning sunlight like a giant mirror. It felt cold and impersonal, like a fortress where only the strong survived. She had entered that building countless times as a child, staring up at it in awe, dreaming of one day working there. But now, with her heart heavy and her mind scattered, it seemed so much larger than before, an intimidating monument to ambition and success that felt entirely out of reach. She rounded the corner and saw the entrance. The sleek, polished doors stood before her like a gate to her future. Or perhaps her lungs screamed for air as she pushed the door open and stepped inside. The reception area was crowded with others, candidates who had arrived on time, impeccably dressed, their faces masks of confidence and anxiety. They looked up when Emma entered, their eyes quickly scanning her, no doubt noting the disheveled state of her hair, the breathlessness in her chest, the beads of sweat dotting her forehead. She couldn't hide the signs of her rush, her sacrifice, her choice. For the first time, the heavy weight of her decision felt like a burden she couldn't carry alone. "Are you here for the interview?" the receptionist asked, her tone polite but firm. "Yes," Emma replied, trying to steady her breathing, but her voice cracked in the process. "I'm afraid you're late," the receptionist said flatly, glancing at the clock on the wall. "The interviews have already started." Emma's stomach dropped. She had come all this way, had made the choice to help, and now it was slipping through her fingers. Please, I just need a chance." I'm sorry, you have to go." The receptionist cut her off, not meeting her eyes. "We can't make exceptions." Emma's heart sank, her legs trembling beneath her. Her heart is aching. She thought about the elderly man. Would he have survived if Emma hadn't stopped? The thought brought a small sense of solace, but it wasn't enough to drown out the sting of rejection. "This was my chance," she whispered, tears welling up in her eyes. "Who knows, I could have been chosen for the job." Emma had grown accustomed to life's struggles, working odd jobs to pay for college, sacrificing personal desires for her family's needs. But this was supposed to be her breakthrough. Hope Foundation wasn't just any organization. It was her dream. And now, that dream seemed impossibly far away. They only recruit once every 10 years. Finally, she nodded mutely, her throat closing up as the weight of the world seemed to press down on her. The room blurred as her eyes welled up with tears. She stepped back into the lobby, her dreams crumbling around her. What had she done? The weight of her sacrifice pressed heavily on her chest. She had done what she thought was right, but it had cost her everything she had worked for. She turned and walked away, unable to face the others, unable to stand there and endure their judgment. The room felt suffocating, like a prison of her own making. She reached the door and stepped back outside, the cool breeze brushing against her skin, but it did little to calm the storm that raged inside her. She stood on the steps for a moment, taking deep breaths to quell the sudden surge of emotion. Was it worth it? The street in front of her was bustling, the noise of passing cars and people almost deafening in the stillness of her heart. She had chosen kindness, but now she felt empty. The decision had come at a price, one she wasn't sure she could pay. Emma closed her eyes for a moment, letting the tears fall freely, feeling the sting of her defeat. She had helped the man, yes, but now, she faced the harsh reality of her decision. She might never get the job, the chance she had worked so hard for, the hope that had kept her going through the endless rejections and disappointments. Her phone buzzed in her pocket, pulling her out of her reverie. Startled, she quickly wiped her eyes and pulled it out. It was a text from her mother. "How did the interview go, sweetheart? I'm praying for you. I know you can do it." Emma blinked at the screen, the words blurring as more tears fell. She didn't know how to respond. She wanted to tell her mother that she had failed, that the world was just too cruel, too focused on ambition to care about the people who needed help. She wanted to say that no matter how hard she tried, she was just another person swallowed by the system. But instead, she put the phone back in her pocket, swallowed the lump in her throat, and walked aimlessly, down the street. The sun was rising higher in the sky, casting its warm glow over the city, and Emma couldn't shake the feeling that, somehow, she had missed her chance, her one shot at a better life. Hours passed as Emma aimlessly wandered, her thoughts a jumbled mess of frustration, confusion, and self-doubt. She passed the same places she'd walked by hundreds of times, cafes, small shops, and the park where she used to sit with her friends during her carefree university days. But today, they all felt so distant, as though they belonged to someone else, someone who hadn't just lost her chance at a job for helping a stranger. The moonlight bathed the small apartment in a warm glow, but Emma felt none of its comfort. She sat by the window, staring blankly at the street below, the thoughts in her mind whirling like a whirlwind. She had not seen anyone since she returned from the interview. It wasn't as if she was blaming herself for not getting the job. Helping people was good, but was it good to help people and lose your own? Didn't God say, "Love your neighbor as you love yourself"? But on her own, she had loved her neighbor more than she loved herself. While she was lost in her thoughts, Her younger brother came inside the room. "Emma, come and eat dinner." "Mama said that I should call you," her brother said, standing beside the door. "You people should eat." "I don't want to eat," Emma said and hissed. Her brother went out and told their mother that Emma didn't want to eat. "Emma, why don't you want to eat food?" her mother said while standing on the doorway. "Mama, I don't want to eat." Emma grumbled and threw her face away. "Emma, I have told you to forget about these things," her mother said while entering the room. Her mother sat on the bed and patted it for Emma to sit. Emma reluctantly sat with her two arms across her breast. "Emma, I have told you to stop killing yourself over the past. Maybe that job is not your own." "Mama, but what if I would have gotten the job? You know how much I love that job, Mama. So why are you killing yourself because you helped someone? What exactly will you do in that NGO if you don't have a compassionate heart?" As they were talking, Emma's phone buzzed on the table, but she ignored it. She didn't want to answer any calls. "Emma, answer your call," her mother said, and Emma shook her head sideways. "Mama, I don't want any stress tonight. Just answer it. Do you know that a miracle can happen?" "Take your phone, my child," her mother said and thrust the phone in her palm. The phone had stopped ringing, but Emma promised to answer it if. The caller called again. Emma's phone buzzed again. This time, it was an email. She opened it absently, not expecting anything important. But then, her breath caught. The subject line read, "Important update. Interview results, NGO position." Her hands trembled as she opened it. She stared at the screen for several long moments, reading the words over and over. It couldn't be. Was this real? She handed the phone over to her mother. Her mother's eyes widened as she stared at the phone. The email was brief, but its contents hit her like a punch to the stomach. "Dear Emma Walker, we are pleased to inform you that you have been selected for the position of Program Coordinator at the Helping Hands NGO. After careful consideration, we have found you to be the ideal candidate for our mission. Your selfless act of compassion has not gone unnoticed. We believe you embody the values that are essential to our work. You have shown that you understand the importance of empathy and care in a way that no resume could ever convey. Please report to the office at 9 a.m. tomorrow for your first day. We look forward to working with you. Warm regards, Elizabeth Grant, Director, Helping Hands NGO." Emma's hands shook as she read the words over and over. She could hardly believe it. The woman, Elizabeth Grant, had seen her act of kindness. She had chosen Emma, not because of her qualifications, but because of her heart. But what compassion! Where did the woman know her from? She didn't do the interview. She wasn't even allowed into the interview room. How come they gave her the job? Many things were running through her mind. Her mother placed her palm on her back, nodding her head. Tears blurred Emma's vision again, but this time, they were tears of relief and gratitude. Emma's legs gave way, and she buried her face on her mother's laps, overwhelmed with emotion. She couldn't stop crying. The weight of everything, the disappointment, the doubts, the fear, and the hope, finally breaking free. She had chosen compassion, and that choice had made all the difference. The next morning, Emma arrived at the Helping Hands NGO office promptly at 9 a.m., her heart thumping loudly in her chest. The sleek office building was in sharp contrast to the humility of its mission. Sunlight glinted off the glass exterior, a subtle reminder of the hope and possibility she felt returning to her life. Emma clutched the strap of her worn leather bag as she stepped through the doors. Inside, the atmosphere was alive with energy. Staff bustled around carrying files, answering calls, and coordinating activities. The walls were adorned with photos of smiling children, families, and communities, the beneficiaries of the NGO's efforts. Seeing those faces brought a lump to Emma's throat. She had been given the opportunity to make a difference here, and she wouldn't take it for granted. "Emma Walker?" A voice called, pulling her from her thoughts. She turned to see a middle-aged woman with warm hazel eyes and an air of authority. Her name tag read Elizabeth Grant, Director. Emma recognized the name immediately from the email. "Yes, that's me," Emma said, her voice trembling slightly. Elizabeth smiled, extending a hand. "It's a pleasure to meet you. Welcome to Helping Hands. Come with me. There's someone I'd like you to meet." Em followed Elizabeth down a corridor lined with more photographs and framed certificates of appreciation. Her nerves tingle with anticipation. She couldn't shake the feeling that this meeting would be significant. Elizabeth led Emma into a spacious office at the end of the hallway. The room was modestly furnished, with bookshelves filled with texts on philanthropy, sociology, and community development. Sitting behind the desk was an elderly man, his kind face instantly recognizable. It was the same man who had fallen on the roadside. Emma froze, her breath catching in her throat. Her mind raced with confusion and disbelief. Why is he here? The man looked up and smiled warmly. "Ah, Emma," he said, standing and extending his hand. "We finally meet under less dramatic circumstances." Emma hesitated before shaking his hand, her thoughts a whirlwind of questions. You're the one from yesterday, are you?" Elizabeth interjected with a chuckle. "This is Mr. Thomas Hargrove, the founder of Helping Hands. He was the one overseeing the interviews yesterday." Emma's legs felt weak, and she sank into a chair without being asked. "I don't understand," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. You were lying on the road. You needed help?" Mr. Hargrove nodded, his expression somber. "Yes, I was. But it wasn't by accident." He leaned forward, his gaze steady but kind. "You see, Emma, the work we do here at Helping Hands isn't about qualifications or experience alone. It's about the heart, empathy, the willingness to stop and help someone, even when it's inconvenient or risky." Emma's eyes widened as the truth dawned on her. You were testing us? But your ankle was swollen?" Mr. Hargrove smiled gently. "Yes, in a way. It wasn't just a test. It was a way to see who truly understands what it means to serve others. I staged that situation to observe how people would react. Out of dozens of candidates, you were the only one who stopped to help me." Emma's emotions surged, a mix of shock, relief, and a touch of indignation. "But what if I hadn't gotten the job? I could have lost everything." Elizabeth placed a hand on Emma's shoulder. "You chose kindness despite the risks. Emma, that's what makes you extraordinary. You didn't know who Mr. Hargrove was, yet you helped him. That's the kind of person we need here." Tears welled up in Emma's eyes, but this time, they weren't from disappointment or fear. They were from gratitude and validation. She had made the right choice, even when it seemed foolish. Her heart had guided her, and now, it was being rewarded in ways she never imagined. Mr. Hargrove leaned back in his chair, his gaze thoughtful. "Emma, there's something you should know about the man you helped yesterday. His story is more personal than you realize." Emma tilted her head, confused. You mean the one who fell?" He nodded. "He wasn't just anyone. I am the one. I did everything to make sure that this NGO will continue to thrive in every circumstance. And with this little experiment, I have gotten what I wanted." Emma gasped, her hand flying to her mouth. "You are really an actor. You look vulnerable." "He is an excellent actor," Elizabeth said with a laugh. "But his vulnerability wasn't fake. He's been through his own struggles, and that's why this work means so much to him, and to all of us." Emma's chest tightened with emotion. The man she had helped, the man whose gratitude had moved her to tears, wasn't just a stranger. She was part of something bigger, something that Emma was now a part of too. Mr. Hargrove smiled. "You passed the test, Emma, but more importantly, you showed us who you truly are. Welcome to Helping Hands." Emma stood, her legs trembling, and extended her hand. "Thank you, sir. I won't let you down." Emma wanted to ask him how they knew her name, but she remembered that she told the receptionist. Perhaps everything was staged. As Emma left the office that day, her heart felt lighter than it had in years. She had faced the ultimate test, not of her skills or intellect, but of her character, and she had succeeded. The opportunity ahead wasn't just a job, it was a calling, a chance to make a real difference in the lives of others. Walking out of the building, she paused on the steps, gazing up at the sky. The weight of her past fears and disappointments seemed to lift, replaced by a profound sense of purpose. In helping one person, she had found her path, and she vowed to spend the rest of her life helping others find theirs. Hello, champions. I hope you enjoyed the stories. Thank you for always watching and listening to our stories. Please leave a comment below, hit the like button, and subscribe to our channel. Keep liking, keep commenting, and keep watching. And please don't forget to subscribe to our channel. Thanks.